Is here to interview us about our farm, which is an incorporated farm. It's Glen Acres Farm Incorporated. We're the sole corporate owners of it, and the board of directors and the officers. It is a family farm. It's a century farm that dates back to 1879 when my initial family moved up here. It's expanded over the years, and in fact Sylvia's grandfather owned the acreage that we're standing on right now, and the Glens bought it from him. I don't know what year that was, but
in the 50s.
Yeah, it was in the 50s because Interstate 70 divided their property, and it was just easier to sell it than try to fly across the highway. So we have a nice relationship here with her being a Borgilt, Lindenbringer background, and me being a Glen, and we have a combination of acreage. So Lewis was wondering about the alfalfa, and I guess this video is taking it from the start of planting till the harvest, right? Is that what you're looking at?
I don't know. You want to know what we're going to do with this alfalfa?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is alfalfa, and it's also orchard grass.
Yeah.
In this field.
Yeah.
And it's been cut and baled just within the last week.
Yeah.
And Jeff Jones rents the farm. He leases the farm, so he takes care of the bales. He sells them. I'm not sure where he sells them. The different farmers, and mostly dairy people, I think.
Yeah.
And It'll take another 6 weeks or so before, at least before it grows up again, and then there'll be another, at least be 1 or 2 more cuttings through the summer. And we plan to keep this farm in grass, alfalfa or orchard grass or some kind of grass or pasture, as long as we possibly can, because that keeps the erosion down. We'd rather not do row cropping.
Huh.
And this has been row crop for many years,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and all the way to the north there, and we've had a lot of erosion, even though we, over the years, Dad put in tile terraces and did some other control measures, but with row cropping, it's just with highly erodible land, which most of Callaway County is designated as highly erodible.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep it down, and in the past several years we've had torrential spring rains, and you can see the results throughout the county of how the land. But since we put this in alfalfa and orchard grass, it's holding it pretty well.
Yeah, yeah.
So our intent is, as long as we're alive, if we can do it, we're going to keep it in alfalfa and orchard grass or some kind of pasture mix. And the problem with alfalfa is that maybe you could get 3-4 years out of it. If you're lucky, you might get 5 to 9 years.
Yeah.
But once you have to replant, now the experts are saying that you have to rotate a crop in it for 3 years to get rid of the toxins that the alfalfa leaves.
Oh, yeah.
So in that case, if we want to put it back into alfalfa, we're kind of forced into going back to row cropping, which gets us back to the erosion problem. So we've been working with the Joneses on overseeding with a good pasture mix, you know, of legumes and timothy or whatever, and just get it into grass, a good quality hay that may not be the high quality of alfalfa, but you know, close enough to it that it would be sellable.
Hey, Ken to Monroe, you.
That's right. I'm the son of Monroe. It's Walter Monroe, but he went by the name of Monroe. And his dad was Walter E. Glenn.
Yeah.
And his dad was James Monroe Glenn, and he was the first one of the brothers to move up here and buy
Oh, yeah.
on down here.
Yeah,
to
it
the
wasn't
north.
this piece, but what connects with this piece, that's what they bought.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they bought the 2 sections from road to road.
Yeah.
That's what they bought.
You have the sister piece.
That's correct. I have a sister, Nancy. She lives in Texas, and she has been there long enough that she thinks she's a Texan now and will never come back here. So we bought her out, her half out after Dad died, and so now we're the legacy to carry it on, and hopefully it'll stay in the family for a long, long time, but you never know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My name's Jeff Jones, and this is my dad, Kenneth Jones, and we wanted to tell you a little bit about the alfalfa that we're raising here and the reason why we are raising it. And it's not all straight alfalfa. We have orchard grass in it, and the reason why we're raising it, it's probably about the best hay quality that any of us could raise for animals such as horses and dairy cows and beef cows. And protein on this usually runs all the first cutting around 15%, and then the second, third, and fourth cutting can run up as high as 21 to 22% if it's put up right. And we're raising it to help feed the world through our animals. And this alfalfa and orchard grass helps stop erosion, but it also helps give a habitat and an environment for the animals and the wildlife around here, such as deer and quail and different things like that, and turkeys. And we help build the soil because the alfalfa is a legume, and it helps put nitrogen back in the soil, so we're helping raise our fertilizer so we don't have to put all the fertilizer on the ground. And you probably want to know how many acres was here, and Dad, you remember how many acres is on this that's established?
Yeah, there's 241 acres that is established, and we have an alfalfa and orchard grass here. And I'd like to add that alfalfa is the most palatable of all the hays, and I've been told that cattle like it like kids like chocolate ice cream. So everything likes alfalfa.
That's right. And
Yeah.
it's pretty labor intensive. It takes a lot of trips across the field, and it takes a lot of good men to put this up. And we couldn't do it alone. And Lewis, every time we come in here, he helps us bunch the bales. And then we have dump trailers like the one in the background here, and we'll load those bales after they're bunched on the dump trailer and get them to the edge of the field as soon as we can, because if the bales sit in the field very long, it kills the stand. And so once we get them to the end of the field, we like none of the bales to be touching each other, because they go through a curing process, and they'll actually shrink about 10% in about a 30-day period as they sweat out the moisture that's in there. And we have a moisture tester that we test our hay with, and when the hay gets around 18% moisture, that's when we want to bale it. And after it goes through the shrinking process, or the sweating process, where it becomes more stable, a 1,000-pound bale will shrink about 10% at 18% moisture, so it'll be weighing about 900 pounds this fall when we go to feed it, or this winter when we go to feed it. But we don't do this by ourselves. I mean, we mentioned Lewis helps us stack the bales, and then we've got a couple of young men that help us with the cutting and the raking and the baling. And I grew up doing it with little square bales, and then we went to a big square baler, and now we're to big round bales. And the big round bales, the reason why we do it all in big round bales now is it's the most financially practical for us to do that. And the big square balers have gotten so extremely expensive that they're not hardly affordable. And the round bales, when you round bale that hay, you can go to bed at night. If it rains, it's not going to hurt it. It's always best if you can put this hay in the barn, but a big square bale, if it gets rained on, it's like a sponge. It just soaks up the water.
Yeah.
And a big round bale with a net wrap on it, it'll shed the water off real well, so you can sleep easy at night if it rains. It's just going to help the stand grow back. And I was trying to think there on the net wrap. We put net wrap on all these bales, and the main reason we do that instead of string is because it takes a revolution and a half for that round baler to go around to put that net wrap on. Well, if you're putting on string, it's got to keep rolling to put that string on, so it might make 14 revolutions. Well, while you're sitting there putting that string on, you're beating all the leaves out of the baler. And even with leaf catchers on the bottom of the balers, when you pull up, there's still a bunch of leaves on the ground. Well, that's your protein.
Yeah.
And when you make just a revolution and a half with the net wrap and you pull up, all the leaves are in the bale. You hardly shatter any of them out. So it does a pretty good job. And that's the main reason we do it with net wrap. But it's a lot easier to feed string because you don't have to get off the tractor to take that string off. You've got to take that net wrap off when you go to feed it. So that's a little bit more work. What are we planning on doing with this, Dad?
Well,
The alfalfa bales.
we grow the alfalfa. We also have registered Angus cattle, and like I say, we like to keep some of the first cut for you because they love it, and it's just the best of hay. But we also use it as a cash crop, so we do sell a portion of it. Dairies love it. It's great for cows, and they love that. And we have several different dairies, and also folks that have horses love it too. And we have several customers that have horses. Some of the Amish even are happy to get this kind of hay because they know that it's what their animals like.
And usually about every 30 days is the way the cuttings come off. And we like to get 4 cuttings a year, but it all depends on the Mother Nature if we get the moisture to get that. If we hit a dry spell, we may only end up with 3 cuttings, but we like to have 4 cuttings, and usually they come off about every 30 to 35 days. So it keeps us pretty busy through the summer, but it's also an opportunity to raise a lot of hay off a few acres and good quality hay.
And as a landowner, Jeff mentioned that the alfalfa is a legume, which of course puts nitrogen back in the soil, but when you're taking everything off all the time, as a landowner, there's a concern for the quality of the soil. And so the Joneses have worked very closely with us and have a good program of replacing not only the nutrients in the ground, but the organic matter through fertilization program and stuff like that. So it works well for both sides of the agreement here.
You said that just right, because it helps all of us if we help build that soil. It's
Yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
putting money in the bank. If you keep drawing it out, you're mining the soil, and each year it's going to become less. And then it's going to be harder for me to be able to pay Phil to rent the land because the production is going to go down.
Yeah.
So if we can build it and make it better every year, then it makes it better for all of us involved.
Yeah.
And we do that in several different ways. We put commercial fertilizer on, and we also put horse manure on, and we watch this very closely through soil tests every year, kind of knowing what we're taking off. We want to not just put back what we took off, but add a little bit more to it. So the next year we can hope for a little bit better season, a little bit better production if we get the moisture to do so.
And in the first segment of the videotaping, we already went over with you, Lewis, on what the Glen vision is for the farm and keeping it in pasture and grass and stuff. So in answer to the question, what do we plan to do, I think that's been answered. But of course, a lot depends on a lot of factors. The economics of the situation. I'm not going to live forever, and whoever ends up with the farm. So things could change, but that's our plan right now.
And we're right with Phil on that. We'd like to keep it established in alfalfa and orchard grass, but usually on average, a 10-year-old stand of alfalfa is extremely old. Dad, what would you say, 7 years?
7 years is what they
It's
usually
probably
say.
average, and then they renovate it and go back, and they say to put it in row crops up to 3 years to get all the toxins and bugs and everything out of the soil that feeds on the alfalfa, and that way when you come in with a new alfalfa stand, it has a good opportunity to reach its full production.
Yeah.
But in this situation here, we've been adding some legumes to it every year, hoping to extend the life of it so that we don't have to renovate it. Because anytime you renovate it, you open that ground up, and if you have a lot of hard rains, you're having the opportunity for erosion and stuff to take place. So what we like to do is keep it covered up, and we're trying to make the stand last as long as we can by putting such things as lespedeza and red clover in it. As the alfalfa dies out, then we have other legumes that will come in there and help fill the gap. So
Usually orchard grass kind of fills the gap as naturally as the alfalfa thins.
yes.
And if it doesn't, we can add a little orchard grass to it. And then if we put a little extra nitrogen after each cutting on, it makes the orchard grass produce more.
the alfalfa
And,
feeds
helps
some
keep the
nitrogen,
production up.
and if we can add a little bit to that, then it'll reach its optimum ability to grow the most production that we can. When we establish it, usually we put like oats or wheat in, I think is what we'll probably put in on the 80 acres north of here, and we use that as a cover crop. And that's an annual, so when you cut that off, it won't come back. But what happens, it'll jump up out of the ground real fast to help stop erosion, and then the orchard grass and alfalfa, as it grows slower, it'll grow up through that. So when you cut the wheat or the oats off, then the orchard grass and alfalfa will be there to take care and protect the land covered up. That's all I can think of. Is there anything else you can think of, Phil?
I don't think so.
Phil maybe already covered this, but there's nothing like alfalfa to prevent the erosion of highly erodible land. If you can get it established, those roots go down deep. They help hold the soil. And on this particular farm, we can bale hay all across what used to be ditches, all the way across, and that's a big plus on ground that's marginal or highly erodible to prevent erosion. Alfalfa is one of the best.
Sorry. The only other thing I can think of to tell you is there's not a lot of alfalfa grown around this area, and people wonder why is that so if it's such a good crop. The main reason I can explain is you can insure your row crops better than what you can insure your grassland for, and so you're kind of working without a net when you're raising alfalfa and orchard grass. So you've got to be more motivated, and you've got to work a little bit harder to sell that crop. We can't just take it to the market like we can soybeans and sell it on the open market. We've got to sell it one-on-one. We've been blessed with a lot of good customers, and then we've got a lot of need there at home too with our cattle, and we've never had any trouble moving the product because it is a good quality product, but you got to work at it, and I think that's probably the main reason there's not more alfalfa grown. What do you think, Dad?
Well, that's right. I agree that there's a lot more labor in alfalfa. The folks that grow in row crops, they got where they can make maybe one trip across the field and they're done. And when you mow, rake, and bale and fertilize 3 or 4 times a season, you got more invested labor. And you know, we're willing to do that because we love the product. We like Angus cattle. We like and we like this alfalfa. And it maybe not won't rank up with the row crops and cash value, but it does have it is a good cash crop.
So all of our goal is the same, is to try to help make this better. And we've all talked about this, and we figured the alfalfa and orchard grass is the best way to make this farm better every year. And we couldn't do it without Phil, and we couldn't do it without Lewis, and we couldn't do it without the men that helps us do this. I mean, it takes everybody to make it work, but it's an opportunity for us.
Well, and you read about sustainable farming and buzzword now, but there's a broad definition of sustainable farming. And pushing out trees and plowing up to the ground and, you know, maximizing your row cropping. You know, I'm not considering that as really sustainable because in the future, I think we're going to get back to a situation that maybe, hopefully it won't be the Dust Bowl, but if we don't be careful, if we're not careful, we could end up that way.
We got to take care of the soil because it helps take care of us. One thing, Sylvia, I want to add, she started doing this a long time ago, is any place that we have a cut or a small ditch that forms because of a lot of slope, she'll put a big round bale in that ditch. Well, that does many things. One thing, it marks it for us so we don't hit it with a mower and tear up our equipment, but the other thing is it slows the passage rate of that water, so when we have big rains, it doesn't just splash out of the field real fast and take more soil with it. Anytime you can slow the way that water leaves, it's going to leave the soil and filter out the water. And so actually what'll happen when that water comes splashing down to that bale, the alfalfa and orchard grass is doing a good job containing it, but in extreme rains, it'll catch the silt and back that silt up from the bale, and it'll heal that ditch. And then some different grass seeds will grow in that silt, and it'll heal that ditch over. And so I think that is a really good idea. Any place that there are any cuts, that if you keep a big round bale in the kind of the head of it, and usually one at the base of it, that helps that ditch to slowly heal back up.
So Lewis, we want to thank you for putting together this documentary and, you know, saving it for the future. So
Yes.
you're an inspiration, you know, what you've gone through medically and that you want to do these kinds of things. So thank you.
We thank you, Lewis.
Thank you very much,
It's
Lewis.
fun to still be farming with you.
You bet. We've done this for many years, haven't we?
Yeah.